Think 100% fresh milled flour is too hard for sourdough. Think again. I turned simple wheat berries into a gorgeous open crumb loaf. And the best part is the same ingredients can be used to make pizza dough, cookies, and bagels. Hit play, and by the end, you'll be ready to make your own simple sourdough loaf bread with step-by-step tutorial with fresh milled flour. When I first got my grain mill and started using wheat berries, I honestly thought my journey to making soft, tasty sourdough bread was over. That if I wanted a really healthy bread that contained all of its natural minerals and vitamins, which is within a wheat berry, that I was gonna just have to accept some semi-par tasting bread as a trade-off. Happy to say that after some trial and error, I have finally found a recipe that me and my family are extremely happy with. So I want to share that with you guys today. In this recipe, it's going to make you one loaf. In this video, I am doubling it, but I'm going to give you the instructions for making one single loaf. So to get started, you want 500 grams of fresh milled hard wheat berries. For this recipe, we are putting all 4 ingredients into this same bowl. So after we measure out our flour, we want to get 227 grams of active sourdough starter. Add in 397 grams of warm water and then 17 grams of salt. Personally, I always eyeball my salt, but 17 grams of salt is the actual recipe. When you go ahead and try to mix this all together with your hands, it is going to be quite sticky, so don't be surprised by that. The wheat berries take a little while to actually start absorbing the water. So you'll see as this process goes on that your dough is going to start to hold together much better and be a lot less sticky. That's one thing that can really throw you off if you're new to using wheat berries, is that slow water absorption. So I'm going to talk with you guys about that a little bit later. You can sometimes think your recipes are a complete flop, but just giving it some rest time, you will find that the results of your dough actually looks a lot different. Hey, real quick, I want to take a quick break from the subject of today's video and talk to you about membership on my channel. If you have an interest in asking me more questions directly, anything from maybe cooking in the kitchen, maybe specifically fresh milled flour, raising toddlers, marriage, to home births, really anything, you have a way to do so by becoming a 3rd tier member on my channel. What that does is it gives you an opportunity to ask me questions monthly, and I come out with a members only Q&A video. Really, it's just kind of a way for us to connect a little more personally and me to answer your questions directly. Either way, I appreciate you for following along and supporting my channel. With our sourdough, we want to do the traditional stretch and folds, which we're used to doing with a regular floured sourdough loaf, putting it to rest on the counter covered for 30 minutes. After your first round of stretch and folds and letting it rest for 30 minutes, we are again going to do another round of stretch and folds. This time, we're going to allow the dough to rest for 1 hour on the counter. One thing that I love about sourdough is, yes, it takes some time in your day, but the tasks and the steps itself are actually very basic and simple, to where you can very well easily multitask and get something else done. I'm working on making a pizza dough for dinner tonight, and I'm gonna take the time to talk to you guys about this slow absorption rate with the water and wheat berries. When you start milling your flour, oftentimes in recipes, it's gonna ask you to wait 15 minutes before you then go ahead and finish the kneading process. So with this pizza dough recipe, I mixed it just enough to where the flour is incorporated in with the other ingredients, and I let it rest for 15 minutes so it could get a chance to absorb the water. And then we are coming back to our dough to then knead it for the 10 minutes or whatever it calls for. Really, the finished result is what we're looking for right here, where when you can stretch your dough and you get like a window pane result. The idea being that if you can stretch your dough without it ripping and you can almost see through it, you can see some light. So that's what we're looking for with our dough. For my pizza sauce, I like to buy just a canned tomato sauce, and I keep a bulk bag of pizza seasoning from Azure, and I just mix together a teaspoon with a can of tomato sauce to make my pizza sauce. Now, as I'm back to working with my sourdough loaf, can you start to see how well this dough is starting to hold together? It's a lot less sticky on my hands. This is a great sign that we're gonna get a fabulous loaf. So we are gonna repeat last steps, just doing another round of stretch and folds and letting it rest for again 1 hour. After that 1 hour, we will then do another round of stretch and folds, which will be the final round of stretch and folds, and we're gonna let it rest on the counter for 3 hours. When I first started making recipes with fresh milled flour, I honestly kind of started to dread it because I'm like, I can't really afford to be making all these flops in the kitchen, because if I'm making dinner, I need it to be dinner. So like, regardless of the results, guys, we're gonna eat this. And there was a little period of like, I'm sorry that our pizza is a lot more like a thick loaf of bread, but that's just how it turned out today. My recommendation to you would be, if you were just starting out with fresh milled flour, go and find recipes that are specifically using fresh milled flour. Don't try to take your favorite recipes in your cookbook that you've used for years and then start using fresh milled flour and thinking that you can just do the same ratio but with fresh milled flour and it's going to turn out great. I'm sorry, that probably will not be the case. At least not for a while, because you will find you do have to make some adjustments in your recipe to get similar results to what you originally got. It's interesting is back in the day, white fortified flour was a luxury or almost a delicacy for the rich. Then everybody else, they traditionally milled their own berries at home. Today's age, however, we are so well adapted to using flour, which has been sitting on the shelf for months or maybe years, and then baking with it in our homes. There seems to be this rise in popularity now where people want to start milling their own flour at home because we are recognizing that there is so much more nutritional value in these wheat berries that maybe just wasn't understood back then. Okay, so now that we have allowed our bread to rise on the counter for 3 hours, we want to go ahead and cover it and refrigerate it. Ideally, you can let it ferment in your fridge for 24 hours. You know, if you only get 12 hours, that's perfectly fine. You want to take out your dough once you're ready to bake and get your oven heated to 425. In this case, I'm lining my crocks with parchment paper because my crocks are so rusty. I've been wanting to cure them for some time, but you can see they're still very rusty and I've done nothing about them. So I'm lining them with some parchment paper. You can also just grease it really well with lard. Some people actually like to sift their flour so they have flakes of bran and germ and line the bottom of their cast iron pot with that. What that will do is that will actually act as an insulator to keep the bottom of your bread from burning, and then of course keep it from sticking to your cast iron. As I allow my bread to bake at 425 for 45 minutes with the covers on, I am going ahead and making some oatmeal cookies. When I first started using fresh milled flour, I was honestly very skeptical on how it was going to work with making things like bagels and cookies, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Culturally, for a long time, we have adapted to baking with a flour that is very white and fluffy. Back in the 1870s to 1890s, that's when the innovations were made and the roller mill was invented. This gave flour for the very first time ever to have a really long shelf life because the oils which are naturally existing in the bran and germ was able to be removed for the first time ever. What they didn't know is they were stripping away so many natural vitamins and minerals which naturally existed within the flour. And during this time, commercial bakeries and most home baking in the Western world started using refined white flour. Because white flour now had a very long, stable shelf life, it no longer became a delicacy, but a very versatile flour that was used in everybody's homes. Flour could be shipped long distance on rail without spoiling. This enabled big industrial production and feeding growing cities. What wasn't understood then to what we're dealing with now is people are having a hard time with digesting the flour that they're consuming on a daily basis. The hard thing about flour which sits on the shelf today is because the milling process involves stripping the flour from its natural minerals and vitamins. What they're doing is adding in synthetic vitamins and minerals, which I greatly question if our body even naturally recognizes them. So therefore, are we even absorbing it as our body should be? And I feel like we're really starting to see a comeback in our health because we have a generation which is dealing with more allergies and food sensitivities than we can keep track of. There is a desire to want to take more ownership in the kitchen and bring things back to the basics. There is no doubt a huge learning curve because we have walked away from so many traditional skills which were practiced on the daily in the past that we simply have let go of. If after watching this video you feel inspired to go and get yourself a mill and some fresh flour, I highly encourage you to do so. It will bless your health and your children's as well. I thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you again next Friday.